Have you ever been reading a book or listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video or something like that, and you hear something that you already know, but for whatever reason it comes back to you at just the right time? It's nothing new, it's nothing earth-shattering, but it just helped you to remember that truth at that time. That happened to me this week. I was listening to a podcast by Brendon Burchard, and he made this statement that often in the beginning, growth is invisible. And that helped me for where I was right now, and so I want to just share some thoughts with you about it. So let's talk about it. Often growth is invisible. Now, like I said, that's probably not anything new to you. You cannot go very far in doing the work of personal development, in learning and growing in personal development, where you don't hear about doing the things behind the scenes, doing the dark work, putting in the effort, putting in the time. This is not brand new information. But sometimes, like I said, it's important that we be reminded of these things, because sometimes you're doing the work and you're not seeing growth and you're not seeing the changes that you want. And that is the time that you're going to be tempted to give up and to quit and to say this stuff's not working. Now, one of the reasons why I think this statement interested me when I heard it this week was because recently I've been thinking about and I have been looking for what some people might call universal constants. And what I mean by that is there seem to be principles, there seems to be truths that you can apply to all different kinds of areas of life. And this is one of them. You know, this idea that often growth is invisible. You can see this in natural growth, like with a baby. I mean, when they're first born, you see some major changes pretty quick. But when you have a child, every day you're looking at them, they they don't seem to be changing all that much. But then at the end of a year, you can look at them, and if you look at a picture of just a year ago, you actually see how much changed, but you didn't recognize that change or that growth on a day-to-day basis. It was like it was hidden. You see this same principle where building wealth is concerned. So many people want the get rich quick schemes, and they see somebody kind of just, it looks like out of nowhere, all of a sudden their finances just take off, and they want to know, well, how do I do that? Well, what a lot of people don't realize is when you're endeavoring to build wealth, particularly through investments and stuff, when you begin, you can start consistently investing in a thing, and it looks like there's no growth. But then all of a sudden, after a certain point, your wealth just begins to grow exponentially. It's not slow. It's an actual curve. I was reading a book by a man named Mel Abraham, and I'm going to have a video on this book, a review of it pretty soon here. But he talked about this as the wealth curve. And he basically says when you're building wealth, there's this period of time that he calls the wealth flat line, where you're investing and investing, investing, and it seems like nothing's happening. And he said the only thing that can eat up that wealth flatline is time. And during that time, it looks like nothing's growing. But he said you'll hit a point when you've reached the end of that wealth flatline where wealth will grow exponentially because of the power of compounding. But it's the truth of this growth is invisible for a while, or it doesn't look like it's changing. And so you see it. You see these, what some people would call universal truths. Now, I'm somebody who believes in God. I believe the Bible. So I believe when you see these universal constants, I believe it's because there are spiritual principles or spiritual truths behind them. But this idea of invisible growth is something that it caught my attention this week. This is certainly true for personal development, personal growth. I began to think of my own journey in personal development or personal growth. This journey of living the intentional life, as I've shared with you. I've been associated, I've understood the concept of personal development for a number of years now. I think it's been even 4 years ago I started attending a yearly conference on personal development. But I really consider the beginning of my journey in personal development or living the intentional life to have started really in earnest last year. At the beginning of 2023, I don't know, something just seemed to click. I I had decided that I wanted to live the intentional life. I wanted to develop in all these different areas of my life, and I determined that in order to do that, I was going to endeavor to grow or learn every single day. And to do that, I made the decision I'm going to read something of personal development every single day. And I had done that previous years, and it, like most New Year's resolutions, I made it a few months and then it kind of just, fizzled out. But last year it didn't fizzle out. And last year it just kept going, and I would read a book and I would learn and I would grow and I would take the notes and I would endeavor to not just check a box I read something, but by the end of the day after I read that, did I learn something and did I grow in some way? And all of last year, every single day, I read something of personal development. And I've continued that into this year. And now I think I'm on day 5 or 6, 500 and something days in a row of reading personal development. And I can tell you that as I look back, there were many, many months that it didn't seem like reading these books was doing anything for me. In fact, it was probably about 6 to 7 months into it before my wife mentioned that I've seen a change in you. I've seen a difference. I think this is working for you. And when she said that, I still didn't feel like I had really changed. Now, I gained knowledge, and that's important. I would learn something from every book, but it wasn't like it was just more information at that point. And it really wasn't until recently where I looked at my life and I saw for the first time that the way I think about things has changed. And I think that was the interesting thing is, and I don't even remember what the specific situation was, but it was very clear to me this situation happened and I saw it one way, but I had the conscious thought the way I see that now is different from the way I would have seen that just a few months ago. And in my mind it was the moment I was consciously aware the way I think has changed because of the personal development work I've been doing. Now, like I said, I begin to think about this more. I begin to think about what was the process, what actually happened there. And this is what I came up with for me. When I started back in 2023 and I began to read these books, each book I gained knowledge. I gained some piece of information. As I read the books, I would highlight them. There were quotes there. There were things that I learned I didn't know before. I gained knowledge, but even the gaining the knowledge, after a few months or so, if I wanted to bring that knowledge back, I'd have to go back and look at my notes. It was a piece of information I knew that was there, but it hadn't really changed my behavior or my thoughts or my habits or anything. But the more I read the books, now it's important that you pick the right books, obviously. But the more I read books on the same subject, I began to see that it went from just getting pieces of knowledge to beginning to understand concepts. I might read, and I switched back and forth. I didn't necessarily have a specific. I'm going to read financial books for 6 months. I'm going to read habit books for 6 months or whatever. But I kind of went with the flow, whatever seemed like the right thing to do. But over time, I began to, I had read maybe total 10 books on finances. And the more I did that consistently, consistency is a key. Not only was I getting pieces of information, but my understanding of the different concepts began to form. You begin to see the same things kind of throughout different books. And so I went from knowledge to understanding. But then as I continued to do that, that's when my thinking began to change. And so I began to see that this situation that brought this to light for me, I took the knowledge and the understanding that I had been developing over the years, and when the situation came, I was able to apply that to think a new thought, basically, that I would not have thought before. And so it just brought this to light. What would have happened if after 6 months of reading, I would have thought, okay, this has been good. I got some good information, but I'm not really seeing major changes. My goal in reading financial books is to change my financial situation. Well, that didn't change immediately. I'm not just going to go read, 5 books on finances and all of a sudden I'm a millionaire, right? There's this process of growing, but I didn't recognize it. It was invisible. And that, I think, is the danger. I think when you're getting into personal development, your personal growth, particularly, you're making investments. You're making investments of time, you're making investments of finances. You know, I've bought hundreds of books for personal development. I've been going to different conferences. I've been purchasing courses online. I make this investment of time and make this investment of money, but there was a temptation that, well, I'm not seeing the results. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, or I should just quit, or I should just do something else. I just wanted to share this with you because you might be in that same place. You might have been starting this journey of personal development. I call it the journey of living the intentional life. To me, that is what personal development is. And maybe you're seeing other people who are further along in the journey, and you're seeing their growth and you're seeing their change, and you look at yourself and you're like, well, I don't see that in my life. I read all the books and nothing outwardly has changed. I just wanted to encourage you. You're growing. You're gaining knowledge. You're gaining understanding, but in this process, you're learning how to think differently. And really, I appreciate books on building habits, but really, that only really takes effect when you change your way of thinking. And that's a process that doesn't happen overnight. And so if you're on this journey of living the intentional life and you're maybe discouraged, or maybe you're not seeing the results you want, or maybe you're in a really tough financial situation and you're hoping that you'll see a very quick change. You might not, but you're still growing. And so stay on the path. Keep doing the work. Keep living the intentional life. Keep investing the time and the effort needed for personal development, personal growth, and very, very soon you're going to see the results. May not happen today, may not happen tomorrow, might take a year and a half like it did for me, but you will see the difference if you continue living the intentional life.